welcome everybody to an Apocalypsis Historia live stream this evening. We are back here again, another week in a row to talk about Hamlet. Yes, not Hamnet, not that movie that came out earlier this year that neither Chance or I are going to see probably, but yes, we're talking about the Shakespeare play Hamlet tonight. And, we're talking about it because, not just, I actually have it segmented out that I want to talk about this play from multiple different avenues. So last week we were going really hard in the nitty gritty datings of the plays, bringing up all these crazy essays, talking about the dates of the play and who the heck was maybe writing this earlier version of the play and what are all the what's all the evidence pointing for which way or that. And so tonight, kind of taking a step back, and it'll be a little looser, I want to say. Maybe if you like our Timon of Athens video or something like that, where we're just going to I'm just going to maybe prime Chance or tee up Chance and myself for just talking about what makes this play so what it is, right? Because although Chance and I love Timon of Athens, it's not the one that, the lay person is going to know, right? It's going to be the Hamlet one, right? There's not going to be as many plays or even maybe things to say that's so accessible or so foundational to the English language than something that comes from this play, right? And so I'm just going to be talking about, the name of the stream tonight is 800 Years of Hamlet. And you're like, well, Brady, the 1600 is around where Hamlet is, right? That's only, 400 years or whatever. But I'm like, but I'm going to push it back and just talk about, the sourcing for this story, right? Because not only are we starting with Shakespeare, which is long enough, right? But, he's already drawing from other sources. And so this story is even older than that, right? Maybe we can even go back into the classical period, of course. But just want to talk about what makes this play so enduring and all that stuff. But before we continue, make sure you check out all the links down below in the description box. If you'd like to support the channel, make sure you come join our Areopagus book club, where we are finishing up Richard III this week. We're going to start Midsummer Night's Dream next week, actually. You already missed our Hamlet one, too bad, but I'm pretty sure we'll circle back around to it. And so that's a great way to support the channel. Come and meet with us every single week for these really deep dives into the context of the play and the history and all the surrounding stuff that we kind of find relative to it. And as well, I have also, and I'll throw it up on the screen. I'll even do it because I don't think Chance has actually even seen it either. I actually just, if you go down to the description box, I actually have a t-shirts now ready for. We actually have the Apocalypsis Historia t-shirt ready. This is the only one I was able to figure out. So if you want to support the channel, come grab a t-shirt from this shop. I'll try to figure out if I can get more designs. But yeah, come get the official logo. Get yourself some merchandise, and yeah, come support. Is a great way to help support the channel. And yeah, I freaking love this logo that my wife gifted to me. Shout out to her, what is like almost a year ago now, I guess, or maybe even more than that, I forget. But anyway, yeah, awesome way for you to come support the channel is to grab some swag. And of course, make sure you check out my website, Cleo's Classics, if you'd like to join a semester-long seminar as we go through ancient texts as well and kind of do these deep dives that I kind of present here. But more geared, I have it geared for, younger minds and maybe homeschool people or people that just want to improve their navigation of these sorts of things. And so if you'd like to do that, that'd be a super help to me to kind of help keep bringing all this information to y'all. Or also have the, Venmo if you just want to straight up cold hard cash, would also be super helpful. But without further ado, so maybe some of y'all, maybe if you're just stumbling upon this stream, or maybe if you're already one of our longtime listeners and you already bought into Shakespeare, you already know the great stuff too. But Chance, before we kind of got into reading Shakespeare or whatever, once again, it's a text that's so foundational to not just American English culture, but just English speaking peoples in general, right? And I was just gonna ask you, like, what do you remember? It's one of those plays that you're kind of forced to read in high school. And I was just going to ask, like, what do you remember anything about kind of reading it at the time, or what did you feel about the play at the time, back in the old high school days?
So that's an excellent question. So, and also I have taught high school as well, so I've seen this from both ends. But back when I was 17 years old and still had a six-pack, and no, I still got a six-pack. I got one of them right now. It's down to a five-pack. But back in ye old days, okay, so I was a really good student in all AP classes, but my senior year of high school, I decided that I did not need to take AP English as a class because I was going to be an English major anyway, and I didn't need to like necessarily take that class for an AP credit. But then I was like, well, no, I still want as many credits as possible. So I decided I'm not going to take the AP class, but I'm still going to take the AP test. And I passed, and that worked out miraculously, whatever. But instead of taking Miss J's class, and Miss J was lauded as like, the genius of the school. Like Miss Bonnet, my junior teacher, was also a genius, but she was the junior teacher because J was the genius for the seniors, and everybody said, after they went to college, that her class was harder than college, and that I totally missed out on taking her, and I'd have a better understanding of Joyce and all that. And sure, fine, you're probably right. But I took old Dirty Brunson's class. That was his name. ODB is what we called him. Mark Brunson, shout out. He would not approve of this. He had a famous phrase, "Put it back in the horse." That was what he said about beer, and we never quite understood what that meant. But like something to do with horse urine. But not sure. Like, but so that was the lower level English class, and in those days, if it in the lower level, it depended on who was in your class and what your teacher was. And I had a class of like 32, and yeah, there were a bunch of smart kids being slackers, but it was also full of like people with very remedial grasp of English. And so like when we read a text, we listened to it on tape, and I don't know how we're that old, but yeah, I'm that fucking old. Like we had to listen to it on tape. Um, and so we did that for like Chaucer. We did that for like pretty much the standard Britlit survey stuff. But when we got to Shakespeare and did Hamlet, we did not do book on tape. We had the pleasure of watching Kenneth Branagh's 3.5 hour Hamlet, and we didn't read it. That was it. You just watched the fucking Kenneth Branagh movie, and so like that was my take on Hamlet. It was that Kenneth Branagh movie. Like I was not in love with Shakespeare in high school. Julius Caesar was fun, and we got to read it aloud, and we had a good teacher for that. I think you had the same teacher as I did
Yep.
sophomore year. Yeah, Miss Alex Alpos, super shout out. Um, but yeah, like it was a joke, and we didn't like we did not cover pretty much anything of import, or like I don't want to do old dirty too wrong here, because like I know he tried, and like he did a real good job with Canterbury. Like I gotta give him a shout out, even though me and him got in this huge argument about what he asked like the class what the definition of yeoman was, and like I actually knew what the definition of yeoman was, and it's like, yeah, it's like a peasant farmer. It's like the class beneath gentleman class, and he was like, "Nope, it's an archer." And it's like, "Oh, dude, like that's not right." Like yeomans tended to be archers whenever they got put into the military, but like, um, but at any rate, yeah, Hamlet. We maybe did like talked about the to be or not to be speech. We maybe talked a little bit about Hamlet's conflict of guilt and inaction versus action, or something like that. But like that was it. Um, and like on the teaching side of things, I refuse to ever try to teach Hamlet. Like, if I had to teach my students Hamlet, we're just gonna watch the fucking Lion King or something. Because like there's just better Shakespeare to gateway them into it, and there's absolutely no fucking reason to gateway somebody into the deepest end of deepest ends. Like it's like, all right, I'm gonna take my kids swimming. I'm gonna teach them how to swim. Let's go to the Mariana Trench. Like, no, like everybody's gonna die. Like so. That's my feelings about trying to teach Hamlet to a contemporary high school American classroom. Do a different one. Do like Othello or The Tempest, or even some Marlowe or something. There's other plays that I think are just better gateway, and yeah, that's what you should be doing in high school. Um, Now I can also talk about how we treated Hamlet in my two different Shakespeare classes at my two different universities. Um, and both very dry, very Freudian psychological kind of lens that was super emphasized. You're allowed to dabble in maybe some other like queer theory kind of stuff, maybe. But like, yeah, it tended to be very Freudian psychological. Let's talk Oedipal complex. Let's talk about Hamlet having a thing for his mom, and it gets very focused on that. Um, and that was pretty much, yeah, both U of H and Southwestern. That's how we kind of looked at Hamlet. And it's because we're doing a bunch of other plays. We don't necessarily have to look at every aspect of Hamlet. So that's what happens a lot in Shakespeare classes and in college, undergrad Shakespeare classes. They end up giving you like 10 on the syllabus. And so you're like supposed to read 10 Shakespeare plays in a semester. And it ends up being too rapid fire. And you just end up like focusing on one or two aspects of each play. And that's it ends up being its own like survey course of Shakespeare. Both classes felt like that. And you never get so deep into it that like it starts to click is the problem. So like I think honestly undergrad Shakespeare classes would do better to just pick a play, stay on one play till midterms, and then pick a random small assortment to survey through for the rest of the semester. Like that's how I would recommend doing, or just pick three plays and just slow go with three plays or something. Because you can fill the time with just three Shakespeare plays. You really can. But yeah, I don't know if that helps guide or steer the conversation, but like the Hamlet discussion in both high school and undergraduate university, it was lacking. It was, and like, of course, it's lacking. There was such a big gap for us as readers, and I was one of the smarter ones in my classes, and so if I wasn't getting it, like, odds are few people were getting it, and so like I don't know, there's like so many layers to Hamlet that it's like how far into this onion are we trying to go here, and that will change what our objective is and like what we expect to get out of it, and I don't know.
Yeah, thank you for that little survey of because I like how that you've actually not only been through it and actually have been through the in a more that you actually did take actual higher level English classes in college too. So you got to have the bare bones that everyone is sort of instilled with, right? Whether it's just watching Lion King in class or something like that, and then going into college, and then even trying to get out of not trying to get out of college, but then returning to the classroom, and then just realizing that it's unless you really 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 have a take on it, and that you because all I kind of remember is that we talked about the ghost in the beginning. I just remember my teacher being like, Shakespeare does like ghosts, like isn't that cool? Not that I disagreed with her at all, but it's just kind of like what it is, right?
Gary Taylor's like, yes,
Yeah.
yes, grandma stories. Like, okay. um, but yeah, like it. It's funny because it was something that was in the zeitgeist. I think as a high schooler, we all knew what Hamlet was to some degree. Um, but yeah, like I think well into my 20s, all Hamlet was good for was being the structure to create the Lion King, right? Like Hamlet was good, but it's a stepping stone. Like we're headed to something greater, like the circle of like we're headed there. But um I now that I've read way more deeply and fallen into this Shakespeare rabbit hole and fallen in love with reading Elizabethan literature, like it clicks for me on tons and tons of levels, and I don't want to like sit here and sound like a brainwashed initiate that like, oh, if Hamlet doesn't work for you, then you just don't get how it works, and you're not part of the cult, and you got to brainwash yourself into the cult to make it click. And I don't want it to sound like that. And maybe there's aspects of that, but like that's true of any like identity readership kind of thing. Like everybody reads a book so that you can communicate with others. Like that's part of the venture. Um, what I just want to say is that, like, yeah, it just Hamlet needs to be tread with lightly, and just know that there are depths there. And what's nice about Hamlet is you can kind of take it as far as you want to go. You don't have to go to all these Freudian places, or you don't have to go into all these historical mythological places. You don't have to necessarily connect it to Greek drama. You don't have to connect it to Anglo-Saxon and Norse culture. You don't have to connect it to Catholicism versus Protestantism. You don't have to connect it to modernity versus postmodernity. Um, but you can, you know. Um, and so I felt like I wanted you to maybe take over and just do the historical timeline bit for a second, and yeah, run it from its Norse or Scandinavian or Germanic origins, and then run it up till Shakespeare, and maybe we can go from there.
Yeah, because I think that's a good. I was gonna probably segue from that into my observations too, because it would have made it more enticing, and maybe that's just like a plague upon the American education system in general, is that most of our English teachers are uninitiated, and they're having to read this old, try to pitch this old stuff. They're also having to pitch whatever books that they're required to tell the students to go read, right? Because yeah, we're reading stuff like Julius. I don't even remember what other books we read senior year. All I remember is that we had to read. I remember reading Julius Caesar sophomore year, and then going and reading something like Their Eyes Are Watching God, and just like wanting to like tear my eyes out. I actually like didn't even read it. Let's just be honest. I didn't read any of that stuff. Julius Caesar
I've,
was
I've,
actually
I've
more
come
readable.
to love Zoya. Yeah, yeah.
And not to shame on
Sophomore
her,
year
but
looked
it just you
weird.
you've got like
Lord
a
of the
high school
Flies.
kid that you're just like, it's just not really cooking for me.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it is a plague of the American education system that we have this weird thing where we have to like foist the canon onto kids, and so it like gives them this like opposite like immunity reaction where it's like they start treating that stuff like Brussels sprouts, and it takes them till they're 35 years old to realize that Brussels sprouts can be delicious. You know what I mean? And like so that we just have this bizarre like forever child culture. Like I went into Barnes and Noble today. I don't do that often, and I did not buy a book, but I live near one of the biggest mall in Georgia, so I wanted to see what their Barnes and Noble had to boast, and I just wanted to go look at the Shakespeare shelf, and it has a tiny little Shakespeare shelf. It's smaller than mine. The giant Barnes and Noble has less Shakespeare than I do in my office here. But like books across the front section, right near the cash registers on the bottom floor, just covered page to page, or table to table, with all these fancy new awesome looking books. And then you go up and you read the book title and you're like, this is a fucking children's fantasy novel. And it'll be like New York Times adult bestseller. And it's like, what do you mean adult? This is a children's novel. And you pick up the one next to it and you're like, oh, okay, well, no, this is a children's novel. I see this is a little more adult, but this is definitely a kid's novel. And no, the kids section's over there, sir. And like, you go to the kids section, shit looks the same. It's just there's more space between the words is all. And like yeah, like the current bestseller list of books, like it's enough to make Nietzsche like say, nope, fuck eternal recurrence, I'm done with it. Like fuck all y'all, I'm done. Like nihilism for the win. Like I'm absolutely certain that Nietzsche would change his views on society if he just saw what was happening at Barnes and Noble. um but yeah, like it's not easy to introduce Shakespeare into that sort of setup. And it's just, we're not reading as much as young people. And so, like, you go back in the 1700s and you go find some well brought up kid, and like, guys like reading legal documents by like age 12 or something. But we're in a more stunted society where we have all these other sorts of priorities, like, entertainment and all these organizations and things that yeah, just take more priority than than the page or learning. And back in the day, there's all this free time and there's all this drive to better yourself, and like that was the way to do it. And so um, that's not as clear anymore. So like in a sense, like there's a real question of what is the value of Shakespeare these days, and we can go into that. But um, I think because of it, Hamlet's just kind of a little bit off the table um, at the moment because everybody's at such a beginner level of readership. It from undergrad on all the way down that like it why waste the time?
Well, I wonder, that's what I was wondering too, is that if I had been told that, hey, sure, you're reading old dusty Shakespeare, high school Brady, right? And then maybe the next possible buy-in is like, but hey, yeah, this is also, the layout for the Lion King or something, right? Which is obviously still not exactly enticing to high school us, right? But it's just like, okay, interesting. At least, just for understanding basic plots or basic structures. But then to be like, aha, but but this is actually a retelling of this, just post-Viking period or something like that, right? That that it actually has older origins, and this is a story that's actually being retold. It's not just, hey, Shakespeare just kind of spitting it off the dome here. That there's a sort of lineage or tradition that he's sort of thrown his hat into, and so I don't know if that would have helped anything like that. But then I don't know, like it definitely kind of helps for me later on. It makes it more interesting to me. Once again, that's not going to make it pertinent to everybody, but something about that there are older versions of things that you're casting in a new light is kind of interesting. And of course, we all heard that Shakespeare borrows from everybody or steals from everybody, blah blah blah, right? Whatever sort of thing that everyone just kind of repeats it ad nauseum. But and then kind of getting excited later on. Then but even a teacher would have been like, "Baha, this is also." Is this not the same story as a set in Osiris and Horus or something, right? It's the evil uncle
Right.
and the cunning, revenging son or something like that, and this whole idea of the kingdoms out of order because of these sorts of things. And so, I don't know what maybe it would have, but yeah, some teacher been able to maybe point that out. I think would just make it a little more. A little not just like dusty Shakespeare and crusty Renaissance England, right? It's like no, this is actually a much larger thing that all these things are possibly referring to, and just makes it a little more universal in a sense, right? But it just makes it a little more accessible. It makes it more timeless in that sense, and not just because Shakespeare made it timeless, but it's like he's adding on to this timelessness or something, or tapping into it or whatever, right? And so I just kind of
Right.
even getting excited, during our research and realizing that the Orestia, right, the story of Orestes is very much similar thing too, right? Which we've already discussed at length about. Does Shakespeare have his hands on which version of Orestia tale? Does he have the Roman version? Does he have just the Roman version? Does he have the Greek version by Aeschylus or not? And I just think that in that terms of, once again, we're talking about this timelessness of Hamlet, but there's other iterations perhaps of this character, of this thing that every single culture is maybe sort of pitching or dealing with. Of course, we inherited Disney Lion King, and once again, but I think we've already pointed this out too. What were those particular golden era Disney Renaissance writers? What did they actually study in college? What are they actually known for? Oh yeah, they were reading Shakespearean drama and Renaissance drama and that kind of stuff too, right? And so
Yep.
it definitely seems part of the equation that if you wanted to have something that lasts, you at least start to pay your dues to that sort of thing, right? So maybe
Which
one of those
I don't
YA
know.
novels will be able to strike gold by reading Hamlet or something.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I noticed something the other day when I was watching Merchant of Venice. Like everybody talks about Lion King and Hamlet, but why doesn't anybody talk about Aladdin and Merchant of Venice? Right? Like, isn't he exactly Bassanio, and isn't Jasmine just Portia? Her dad's not dead, but it's the same fucking issue, and Shylock is just Jafar. Like, yeah, it's subtly changed, but it's not any more changed than Lion King is, right? Um,
Interesting.
yeah, and yeah, the genie is Antonio,
Yeah, I was gonna
right?
say, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
and he's even got this sort of
that's
like
why.
aloof personality the whole time too. Like,
Yeah, And as my buddy Ian has told me, like both Antonio and Jeannie can be interpreted as coded gay. Like it's the single male character that just gives unto his more attractive younger male companion, which it's open there with Falstaff if you want to do that too. But yeah, like the genie is basically Antonio with a dash of Falstaff. Like you can like do that with any Disney Renaissance piece, and like honestly to that end, like you go to the later. I mean, Mulan still is Shakespeare, to be fair. I mean, it's not totally exactly Shakespeare, but it's definitely got the "As You Like It" Twelfth Night gender flop thing doing it. Merchant of Venice as well. Um, Hercules, I don't feel like follows a Shakespearean structure, but I think a lot of people may consider Hercules like the end of the Disney Renaissance because I think one could definitely argue that Pocahontas has got some at least Romeo and Juliet, if not Troilus and Cressida, a little bit in there. Um, yeah, Hunchback of Notre Dame. It doesn't have Shakespeare, but that's because it's Victor Hugo. So like you can just that one's so all right. We'll just let it be Hugo, and that's why it's lesser. Like that's fucking why it's lesser. Hugo is not Shakespeare. Like sorry you Frenchies, sorry you guys out there. And but then again, Beauty and the Beast that's Gaston Leroux, so that's another Frenchie. And um, although Beauty and the Beast is like reverse taming of the shrew, so
Ah, yeah, there you
um,
go. Reverse taming of the
yeah,
shrew.
still got it. Uh, which that actually exists.
Oh, that's too funny.
It's
Um,
actually there's actually a The Tamer Tamed by John Fletcher,
mm,
the
mm.
unofficial sequel where the girls do the taming of the men.
Yeah, reverse Uno. Yeah, I like that. Um,
Yeah, not as near as good.
and oh well, here's what I guess I could say is that, yeah, maybe this will get us into slightly the sources because I don't want to talk about the sources necessarily, but recently, and I had just, I've gushed about this for a while, and it's like all in a bunch of my openings, but we recently got to watch, The Northman, right? The Roger Eggers movie, and it's pretty much just it's the Hamlet story, right? But he's trying to use basically the Saxo Grammaticus version, but instead of setting it in Denmark, he's kind of being able to place it in Iceland, right? So that way he can kind of go literally full Viking with it, right? Um, I'll just pull up a poster here just because I like the poster, but and maybe that could be the modern version or iteration of it too, right? Because if Shakespeare's Hamlet is basically just a contemporary for him Renaissance version of that story, because if Saxo Grammaticus is writing his in like what the 1200s, I want to say, then we have,
So,
and then this one is kind of like going backwards again, but just kind of getting it to so that way we can kind of go full Viking. So maybe if you need to convince some youngins to watch it. Although I've heard some people that watch this that they'll watch it and then they're like, oh, I didn't get it, or they think they're walking into a super fight Viking movie. Not that there's not violence in it or whatever, but there's a lot of the
I
psychological
think
drama stuff.
I think a lot of people go into it thinking they're going to get like Netflix's Last Kingdom, which super shout out, tons of fun. But this ain't quite that. This is a little more like Kubrick trying to do Last Kingdom. You know,
Yeah.
it's slower, it's cinematic, it's mythological, it's very historically ensconced in its time and place, and like I don't know, there's a lot of shit that like they do that like the modern American viewer is gonna be like, the fuck was that? Like, why did they do? Why? What's happening? And like the movie doesn't necessarily hold your hand, but like if you have enough of a bearing for it, like it's super in depth and like actually realizing this aimless story in a sort of realistic way. It's like let's treat it both as a legend and as historical, I would say. So there's still elements that, not quite supernatural, but tends towards the mythological, fantastical set of rules, but it's still so much a historical piece. But I was going to ask, yeah, so Saxo's writing it in the 12th or 13th centuries, but when are these events supposed to have taken place themselves?
I kind of forget exactly when his. I want to say it's not just a generation prior or something, or a couple of generations prior to him. So I have this nice article here. It's called Internet Shakespeare. Oh no, this is not the right one. This is the one. It's still Internet Shakespeare. And I was just gonna read this off because it'll just kind of give us at least Shakespeare's thing about it. But yeah, I kind of forget when Saxo's setting of it is, but maybe I'll look this up after I read this part and I can have you talk for a minute when I can go check it out. But let's just read this real quick here because it says Shakespeare did not go directly to Saxo or the other Scandinavian legends we've been describing. Other versions have intervened between 1200 and 1599 or 1601 or 1589, 1589, yeah, when Hamlet was probably written. Saxo's work was first printed in Latin in Paris in 1514. It's almost like 90 years before, right? Two more editions appeared in the 16th century, and when François de Belleforest translated parts of Saxo into French in his Histories Tragiques in 1572, many new details emerged that point forward to Shakespeare's Hamlet. The murdered Horvendel's ghost or shade makes an appearance on the battlements to his son, as in Shakespeare. So there's no ghost in the original Saxo part. The son's name is now spelled Hamlet, otherwise his name is Amleth. His adopting madness as a disguise is taken from Saxo, which is pretty consistent. But Belleforest adds the information that Hamlet also suffers from the genuine melancholy that we find in Shakespeare's play. Where in Saxo's, he's pretty much just like determined and just, playing this game the whole time to make everyone think that he's dumb. And I thought I had something to do, I guess I forgot. Hamlet's mother, Geruth, is now described as having entered into an adulterous relationship with Feigned before the murder of Hamlet's father, which pretty much just like after that she's just kind of like, oh, I guess, we gotta be rid of this guy. Belleforest calls attention to the excessive drinking of the Danes. His setting is anachronistically more a Renaissance court than a Scandinavian abode. Its elegant flooring is more suited to the French 16th century than to the Danish 12th or 13th centuries. Belleforest sees a Christian justification in Hamlet's killing of his uncle, since Fingon's abominable guilt embraces the twofold impiety of incestuous adultery and parricide murder. Belleforest's version is longer than in Saxo's, providing more ample room for psychological insights and moralizations. I can zoom in here, actually, for people. Yoink. Okay. Belleforest's account is more often in dialogue than in Saxo's. It repeatedly stresses the barbarous cruelty and faithlessness of an ancient Danish kingdom not yet having adopted the Christian faith. Belleforest inveighs against bold women who brazenly cast off sacred obligations to chaste marital love. Hamlet, in Belleforest's account, is genuinely and romantically attracted to the unnamed woman sent by Feigned to seduce him, but he and the woman virtuously resist the heady pleasures of sexual dalliance that threaten spiritual damnation. Where in Saxo, I think it's so funny. It's totally opposite in the Saxo version because she's still unnamed in the Saxo one. She's still unnamed in this French Latin translation of it. In the original Saxo, they send some girl kind of where they send, much like how Polonius is trying to send Ophelia to spy on him or kind of get him to in a compromised position. But in the Saxo one, they're like, oh, we'll send Saxo this girl and we'll know he's not crazy. We'll know he's not crazy because he's definitely gonna want to lay with this chick or whatever, right? So Amleth pretty much catches on in the Saxo one, and all it really says is that he just takes her like really far away, and then he still has sex with her. But he pretty much like convinces her like, hey, how about you join this ruse with me, and we're gonna make up this story, and you're gonna say this, and I'm gonna say that. So they go back. And he says, like, and all the guys, all the bros are like, hey, Amleth, hey, did you get with that girl? And he's like, yeah, we did it on the roof. We did it in the ocean. We did it in the sky. We did, he just kind of names up all these, like, crazy things. all this, outlandish versions of their escapade or whatever. And I think the girl is like, no, like it's not exactly, that's not what happened. Or, so that way he gets to have his cake and eat it too.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And I like how it
That's
says here,
fantastic.
though, that also Belleforest is having this whole Christianization of it, because in the Saxo version, at the end of it, it's pretty much clap, clap, clap. Like, Amleth is so awesome. He got his revenge. He burnt them all down. He trapped his uncle in like this building and he burns them all down, basically, right? And it's like, look at Amleth. He was awesome, and everyone lived happily ever after, right? Where obviously in this Belleforest version, it's like, no, like this is proper Christian. It's okay that Christians can have their revenge because the uncle is so bad. Which is once again where Shakespeare just takes it to the next level about that's actually what's causing Hamlet actually all this problem, is that his Christian framework within this more older tradition of revenge is not compatible, right? And that's what actually is the problem when he when God dang, what's his name, Laertes is doing his little confession, like, oh, I couldn't feel bad, and Hamlet's like, dang it, like, I can't kill you because I really want you to go to hell, actually, right? And so yeah, he doesn't even opt for this basic where anybody else could have just stabbed him in the back and been done with it, right? Hamlet's like, no, I need your soul, I need your soul to go to hell, right? Like, there's another level of
Right.
revenge that he's got to complete here.
Right. And like simultaneously, I kind of need that to happen without mine going there, or else I didn't get revenge. I'm at the same place as you still,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? Um, but the more that you and I talk about this idea, the more I can't help but like feel like there's like a meta joke in here. Like there's a really writerly meta joke in that it's like, you know, I keep getting all these like tasks to write these Senecan tragedies, and I keep getting in trouble with Christian censors. Like, which way am I supposed to go to write or not to write? Like
Yeah.
that's the question. And maybe just pitching people like Nash or John Marston. Michael Drayton, Thomas Middleton, every one of them gets something banned. Those guys like actually actively have to ask these questions. And theoretically, the Stratford man should have to as well, but that motherfucker never got nothing banned apparently. So why is he worried about it? Um, but yeah, and I don't think that has to just be Nash either. Like someone like Mary Sidney, who is obsessed with Senecan closet drama as well as Christian, theology and literature. Like there may be some real division there that it's like, no, I gotta explore this. Um but like it at any rate, you can see this like definitive gradual transformation of the Hamlet story through these several steps that like Hamlet is literally getting Christianized, and that it takes a lot longer than we think about it. Like we think, okay, post Rome, Dark Ages, bunch of barbarian Vikings, but like I don't know, by like the year 1000, like the Christian Church has like cleansed everything, and they're all gone, and so yeah, like this shit should be Christian, but like that process is a long ongoing process to say like for everybody, um, and so like yeah, it's interesting that Hamlet hits a sort of wall with Shakespeare, and that like it can't be more Christianized, or else it will undo Hamlet. You know, there is no Christian Hamlet like that. That can't be, not a fully Christian Hamlet. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's just a good segue to maybe start talking about the past versus the present, or rather the old versus the new, the medieval versus the Renaissance, the medieval versus the modern. I don't know anything in that, and it doesn't have to necessarily be set up in those exact dialectical terms. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's perhaps the most fascinating aspect of Hamlet is just this total critique of the passage of time. It's and yeah, a total critique of being in the exact transitional moment of this passing of time.
And I wanted to maybe hold off on, I wanted to even do an even deeper dive, kind of pulling up exact lines, but maybe without trying to spoil all of it. That was kind of some of my thoughts about that's kind of what the ghost of Hamlet's father kind of represents, right? Like, hey, I'm like the past of our civilization, right? And like, I'm something that has not been fully laid to rest, and now you've got to deal with my problems. Now you've got this new setup, you got this new king, you got your mom is remarried, she's like the new church, she's like the new civilization or whatever, and that things are not laid to rest, like you have duties or you owe me something, right? That your civilization, you think you're this new fangled thing, but yet, you're actually so much more, it's literally in your blood, so to speak, right? If you want to just take that, it's literally his dad. And that, yeah, the ghosts of the past are haunting the text, the actual problems in the story itself, right? Or this, or the psychological and sociological tensions in the society at the time, right? Just like you're describing.
Yeah. Can we unpack some names going along that line real quick? Because like, okay, Hamlet, that's the original Germanic name. Yeah, it's been flipped from Amleth to Hamlet, but it's still the same name, right? Geruth has been turned to Gertrude, but it's still a Germanic name. Um, his dad is also Hamlet, but like, what happened to Fingorn? I didn't see Fingorn in the dramatis personae at the start of our Shakespeare. Like, what is he named now?
Yeah, Laertes.
Uh,
Or,
is it
or no, is
is
that? No,
it
I'm sorry. Is that?
no?
That's is that Ophelia's brother?
Yeah, that's Ophelia's
It's
brother.
Claudius.
Yeah,
My bad.
who's his uncle?
Claudius. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What kind of name is Claudius?
Is that more a Latin Roman name rather than a Greek name?
Yeah, yeah. Claudius was emperor, right? He's one of the famous emperors. Yeah. So it's Roman, as in Roman Catholic, as in Christian. Um, and so like it seems to me purposeful that like of our kind of main few characters that his name is just totally ungermanicized. It's totally Romanized. And it's like, why? Why didn't we call, why don't we call Hamlet old Hambino or something, like get into this Latinate thing. Like, why not just make them all Italian like Shakespeare likes to do? Why did he actually keep this in Denmark, but then still change Claudius's name? Well, it's literally like you're saying, the new system underneath the new king, the new Christian system underneath the Roman Catholic yoke. Um, yeah, that's Claudius. But also to that same extent, the whole idea that his father is represents the past, like his father has the same name as him, so like his father can represent, Thomas Kyd's Hamlet. It can represent Belleforest Hamlet. It can represent Saxo. It can represent the so-called old Icelandic saga from the 10th century that's, purported that people think may exist. Um, like at some point, Hamlet, the young Hamlet, that's the Shakespeare Hamlet. Hamlet the Dad is all these past Hamlets, as a text itself. And so yeah, young Hamlet, Shakespeare's Hamlet, saying, what do I do? What is this? Why are you coming and barking at me? Um, and the old text is like, look, we have a system. You got to do it by our old ways, and if you don't, then like, are what kind of what kind of connection do we actually have? You know, um, did you not have a father? Do you not have family? If you were going to wholly reject this system, then you become this orphan.
And even more to that point, there's even more fracturing, not even just a post-Christian, Christian versus, quote unquote pagan or something, right? Because Hamlet also is coming home from Wittenberg, right? And that he's, obviously where
Yep.
the Calvinist sort of universities are kind of at, right? And that, yeah, he's we've already related a lot of this to our Dr. Faustus stream too, right? And the all that sort of stuff and ramifications of even just this Protestant mind space, even upon this medieval mind space, or something along those lines. And so, yeah, that there's even tensions within even tensions themselves, or whatever.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Because young Hamlet is the Protestant text, or the attempt at the Protestant text that's trying to usurp the Roman Catholic position that usurped the pagan position, and like we have that structurally within the text itself. And yeah, so I don't know. Continue.
Marty Drew also says, if Hamlet's most trusted friend is a classicist, that is further appeal to the ages for wisdom from the protagonist. Yeah, Horatio again, and even that's one of Horatio's last lines, like, I'm gonna go out like a Roman or something.
Right, and Horatio, also harkens back to just Horace. Like that's another name for Horace, who's one of the great Roman writers. May also be a shout out to Edward de Vere's cousin, Horace or Horatio or Horace de Vere, who's one of the fighting Veres, which Robert Sidney may have named his daughter after them, Vere Sidney. Um, let me see. I have a few places that I think I want to go with this, but I'm trying to figure out how I want to steer it. So, like, we could keep going farther with this name setup and get into talk about Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, but I think I want to kind of shelf that. Um, One thing we didn't talk about in the last one is that in the earlier version of Hamlet, or at least in the Quarto one of Hamlet, Polonius is not named it's not named Polonius. He's named Carambus, which they're both Latinate, so maybe not part of this Latinate versus Germanic thing. But Carambus seems to point to William Cecil's Herald, and so a lot of people have suggested that Polonius is something of a caricature on William Cecil. So I should have brought that up last time, and I didn't. But yeah, you probably wouldn't be able to get away with spoofing Cecil in the early days, but you could spoof him in 1600s because he's dead. But interesting that, yeah, in the 1600s, that's when it's changed to Polonius. And before that, it seemed to just be Carambus the whole time, so I don't know.
Yeah, that is interesting. I'll read a little more because I'm not going to read this whole thing, but yeah, just to kind of promise some more discussion about it. So, Shakespeare wisely veers away from Belleforest's heavy moralizations, but he must have seen rich dramatic potential in Belleforest's account of Hamlet's stern lecturing to his mother, his asking forgiveness of her for having done so, his insistence that he had done so for her own good, and her contrite response to what he has said. This queen is a mother who, despite her lamentable lapse into adultery, fondly hopes to see her son restored to his rights as heir and king, and accordingly agrees to distance herself from her new husband out of loyalty to Hamlet and his cause of rightful revenge. None of this is in Saxo. I thought although I'm not, I think his mom, well, I think in Saxo he talks to his mom, and I think his mom's like, yeah, like, I'm going to be on your side. And I like, it's interesting too that, maybe this is in the Belleforest, I don't know. Although I guess it's like the retelling of it, so maybe the scene's still in there. But in the original Saxo, in the famous scene of Hamlet wherein Hamlet kills Polonius, on accident, right? Because Polonius is hiding behind like a tapestry or something, right? So Hamlet's talking to his mom Gertrude, and he thinks someone's behind the thing, and so he kind of rams his sword through the tapestry, and oh no, you killed Polonius, because he's eavesdropping on Hamlet and his mom. The same thing pretty much happens in Saxo too, where Hamlet goes and talks to his mom, and they're like in a barn or something, and there's like a big pile of hay, and Hamlet trying to make sure that his mom still thinks he's crazy for a minute, and he's trying to suss out the room. Amleth gets on top of the haystack and starts like jumping up and down, and sound like a chicken or something. And he kind of feels that someone's underneath the haystack, so he stabs a sword or something into the haystack and kills the dude who is spying on him. So I just like how those, sort of parallels and just kind of get updated or whatever, right? That's, yeah, the same kind of scene setup
Right.
gets replayed here. And then he goes and cuts up the dude and feeds him to the pigs, I think, in the Saxo version.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not, and obviously, yeah, the character being killed is not his, maybe quote unquote love interest dad or whatever, right? Because that's Apollonius is supposed to be Ophelia's dad. I'll read this bit and then let you jump in here. The changes in Shakespeare's version, assuming that he knew Belleforest, are of course stupendous. The characters are much more fully developed. Ophelia is now named, we'll hit on that in just a second, and identified as the daughter of the previously anonymous counselor who has become Polonius, or Carambus in the first quarto. Now she has a brother named Laertes, who is Odysseus' dad, classically speaking. The two escorts are now Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, with a detailed history of their earlier friendship with Hamlet and their ambitions to serve the new king. Horatio, perhaps faintly enumerated in the gentleman in Saxo and Belleforest who warned Hamlet of the king's plotting against him, is importantly enlarged in Shakespeare into an intellectual and moral companion with whom Hamlet can share secrets and discuss philosophy. Who we've also likened to that he's very similar to, I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but Orestes in his version, he has like a buddy that's kind of hanging out with him and kind of his little sidekick or someone to kind of bounce ideas or dialogue off with or whatever.
Right.
And and on that note of because once again it had mentioned earlier that there's always a female sent to try to woo or kind of trick the main character, right? She's never named in the Belleforest or Saxo version, but here in Shakespeare he finally gives her a name, and her name is Ophelia. Well, it just so happens that the name Ophelia is borrowed from Italian Ophelia, coined by the poet Jacopo Sannazaro in his poem Arcadia. And so, of course, if you're not new around here, you're going to know Arcadia is definitely related to our pursuit of Philip Sidney as an influence on all this sort of stuff. And so, Philip Sidney writes in Arcadia, and then not shortly after, Shakespeare naming his unnamed girl character after, I don't think there's not an Ophelia in Sidney's version of Arcadia, right? But there's still an interesting line through from these sources here, right?
Right. Right. And to be fair, like, Ophelia could be in the 89 Hamlet, which may or may not be Shakespeare. And because that's right around when Arcadia is like super hot, so hot that it has to be printed in 1590. And Green's doing his Arcadia plays, and his Arcadian romance stuff. It's when Lily starts to shift away from euphuism towards his more Arcadian stuff, like Endymion. So like Sidney's such a huge influence. It's like hard to gauge.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you brought up that like Shakespeare gave her a name, because like that's just something, if you go read any almost pre-Renaissance stuff, like yeah, you get women talked about in some of the courtly love medieval romances kind of thing, like Marie of France definitely features female characters and stuff, and her Arthurian romance stuff. But like you go back to like Anglo-Saxon, and like, dude, the women just don't have names. Like I feel like they say Ecgtheow once in Beowulf, and like several other times she's just like the queen. And like there's several other female characters in Beowulf that it's just a girl. Like they don't get to talk. They don't get
Grendel's
to,
mom.
yeah, Grendel's mom. Like Grendel, and who can forget his mom named Grendel's mom? Like it's this weird thing. So people get all medieval stuff so patriarchal. Like, well, yeah, like it's there. But yeah, like even Green Knight, like the lady that is it at that house that he's tested against? Like, even though she features prominently, like I don't feel like we ever got her name. We got her husband's name though. So like, um, yeah, like that is something that like it totally booms in the Renaissance. Dante does all his Beatrice stuff, and Petrarch does all his Laura stuff. So it's like, yeah, why wouldn't we have a female main character? And like at some point, like I don't want to get too like Marxist about this, but like I feel like that's so capitalistically driven that there's just a market for it. It's and it's yeah because women were allowed to be literate at some point. Like I don't know how many like because you go back far enough, the only literate people are in monasteries, and yeah, it's a sausage party up in that bitch. Like it's all dudes. Um, and so yeah, whoever wrote Beowulf was sitting around a bunch of other dudes, um, talking about dudes. Like bring Judith Butler's queer theory in here if we want, but like point is that yeah, like that is a huge leap in the Renaissance, and like I really can't push it hard enough that Shakespeare is so uber modern, and Shakespeare, not just Shakespeare, like John Webster even more so. But like yeah, they're like is powerful a feminist as anybody up through at least the 19th century, like if not farther.
Yeah, I think I
Um,
kind of made the
and
reading
so that
some time ago. Like, few writers can be loved across the gender aisle so much other than Shakespeare, right? Like, I don't know, pick out like another, I don't know how many girls are into like Dostoevsky or something like that, right? It's just, or name any other like super famous writer, but something about Shakespeare like equally lauded by both
yep,
sides.
yep. Because yeah, you go Jane Austen, total chicklet. You go to Charles Dickens, total dicklet. Uh, um, no, totally agree. I'm actually kind of you've put me like I feel like I'm challenged to go look at my bookshelf, which is my bookshelf's gonna have a lot of dicklet on it. So don't know if it's gonna help, but yeah, like that's a hell of a question. Like I feel like you have to get to I don't know something like Victorian era stuff. Like maybe like gothic stuff. Like chicks dig gothic stuff. Frankenstein is written by a chick. Um, um, so maybe early gothic romantic era, but definitely by like Oscar Wilde and Shaw and stuff like that stuff's as much for women as if not more for women than men. Um, you know, whatever that means. Don't take that too too structured. Um, but yeah, like that's a hell of a question. That's a really good question. You're probably absolutely right. And like I don't know, there's this gets into a discussion that I was having with my buddy Ian today about like just comedies versus tragedies, where I got like my buddy Ian just like almost blanket statement prefers the comedies to the tragedies in Shakespeare. Like I he'll put like Romeo and Juliet up there, and like I think he really likes Caesar, Macbeth, and stuff too. But like, nah, for him, As You Like It, Twelfth Night, Much Ado, like that those are the big ones for him. And then you got my roommate Jamie, who's like, dude, I don't watch it. I don't none of those girly fucking plays, man. Like that Much Ado shit. Like I'm not watching that again. Like I'll do Richard the Third, man. Like we can do Hamlet, but like if I'm gonna watch any of those girly comedies, and it's like that you know like there's something real to that divergence, and it extends way both sides, and I don't know, that's not normal.
Yeah, that's kind of yeah, dude, yeah, it's very interesting. Um, so yeah, I just wanted to share that bit about Ophelia and obviously the connection to Arcadia and that name or whatever. So very interesting, and of course, yeah, and I guess Taylor Swift has now made it even bigger. But so once just another endearing point, I guess, to this longevity here of Shamlet of Hamlet, right? And yeah, that modern pop stars can still draw some cultural currency out of these old plays and out of this all these old texts too, right?
Taylor Swift may think she's doing something big, but Robbie Robertson and the band, all the way back in 1974, already had their own hit called Ophelia. And that song directly plagiarizes Billy Preston's Nothing from Nothing from 1973. And,
Oh, really?
Billy Preston's the fifth Beatle. It's the same fucking song. Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun. I won't sing it for you, but it's the same song.
Interesting. So
enjoy them both.
I'm not gonna read any more of this history of Hamlet because I think I'm kind of driving the point home. But I did want to read. Well, let me see. And one thing that's kind of interesting. Let me bring it back to Arcadia one more time, actually, real quick. We already brought this up on the Philip Sidney stream we did recently about the Mystery Arcadia. But and this painting's actually still after, but I still wondered if there's a connection, right? So Shakespeare names his Ophelia from the original Arcadia by Sannazaro, which is already like 100 years earlier almost, right? But whenever you look up Hamlet, what image comes up with Hamlet more than anything, right? If you're gonna type in Hamlet, what's like the most obvious or spontaneous, not even spontaneous, but what's the most reoccurring image that I think that anyone would think of when they think of Hamlet? What are you gonna think of? You're probably gonna think of probably the to be or not to be,
York skull,
and holding the York skull, right? Like what else encapsulates this more? Like I just typed in Hamlet here. And how many times are you gonna see not only just the skull, but obviously him holding the skull, right? Because it's just so much wrapped up into the theme of the plays themselves, right? And yeah, this is just the big takeaway image or the big takeaway meme as we just kind of scroll through here and look at all these different examples. And yeah, just constant, it's just constantly reoccurring. It's like if you're gonna play Hamlet, that this is gonna be a big gravitas moment whenever you get there.
Like that one in the middle doesn't even have somebody on it. It just was the skull with the crown, which is if you go like a little down, like right underneath Ben Kingsley there. Yeah, like that one's clever because it's both the York skull and it's King Hamlet's skull. But yeah, like the skull can just stand in for multiple people at that point. It stands in for Hamlet too.
Yeah. And once again, I already did it, but since I just connected that Arcadia thing too, so there's this painting here, which is called, it's in Arcadia Ego, also known as the Arcadian Shepherds, and this is from 1618, roughly, or 1622. So this is even, maybe it's just barely before the folio, but yeah, this image here just looks so much to me like Hamlet and Horatio at the grave, right? They're just looking at this skull, right? It just looked. When I'd seen this, and we already did a bunch of stuff connecting Sitting to this stuff, and this is technically after, Hamlet's already probably out, right? So, but maybe we got some other reversals of inspiration because it just I don't know, just looks so much like the scene of the graveyard, and essentially, right? And I just thought that imagery was kind of really fascinating, so I just wanted to kind of bring that up again. And the other famous one is not actually till a little later. Or is it around the same time? It's a little later. Nope, I lied. When's this one? When's the other one? It's definitely later. The Poussin one is 2 decades later. Or less than 2 decades later. But definitely still after. And that one's not as reminiscent. It looks a little more classically Greek. But this one definitely has a little bit of that Baroque Gothic feel to it, Like it's not like the lighter the other Arcadia one, which looks a little more classically Renaissance.
It's interesting because they each remind me of different Venetian painters. This totally reminds me of like Veronese or even Titian, super bright. All the little detail on the foliage, and then the other one totally reminds me of Tintoretto with all the muted colors and the stormy skies. And I enjoy both Tintoretto and Veronese, and so did Philip Sidney. he wrote about them. He said, I want my portrait painted by one of these two. Though I still want to say there's no fucking way he didn't visit Titian's studio.
Yeah, I was just seeing the parallels and imagery between them. It's just like, yeah, look, two dudes staring at a skull here. It's just like two dudes staring at a skull. I don't know, just like that imagery. But moving on, I was gonna read some passages. I haven't read this whole book yet. Someone had mentioned to it some time ago on one of our videos, and it's called Hamlet's Mill. And this book is way more about comparative mythology and about archaeoastronomy and this whole idea of precession of the earth, and that Hamlet's Mill, which is, when they say Hamlet's Mill, they're talking about, like maybe it's even like the Little Dipper or the Big Dipper, the one that it kind of goes around, that it's actually a sky clock thing, but it's actually sky clocking an even longer period of time or whatever. And I actually have the book, and I haven't read the whole thing. I've only kind of dabbled in the first chapter, but I'm going to read just a little bit of where he talks about just the timelessness of the story itself, right? Because he's going to go into all this other sort of crazy things, but so
this is all kind of like the Randall Carlson, sort of pitch, like so much of not just mythology but esoteric knowledge.
Yes,
is the passing on of either not, what's the word? Not geomancy. Maybe it is geomancy, but like understanding all the aspects of the globe as well as the heavens, and being able to navigate mathematically the earth and the sky.
And that they that all the myths kind of encapsulate a bunch of that information, essentially, right? Oh, I want to read Marty's thing here real quick. What did he just say? James Shapiro is the arch-Stratfordian, but I respect his thought about classicism in Shakespeare. He says Shapiro explores old world characters in Shakespeare versus, I guess, post-Christ. He sorts Hamlet's friends or foes into these kinds, and he also adds, placing the time period in the past gives room for rational paganism. In a way, Hamlet can be pre-Troubles.
I'll have to check that out. I'm not as bothered by Shapiro since he's not as much in the attribution game. I'm like, it's funny. I'm like not worried at all about what people like Shapiro or Wells or Bates say, just because they don't have as much influence directly on the attribution thing. They're ones that wait for Vickers or Taylor to say something, and then they figure out how they can lump onto it with their shit. So like Bate did that a million times over with Titus, where he was like, no, Titus is totally all Shakespeare. And then like less than 10 years later, he's like, Titus is totally not all Shakespeare. It's like, yeah, he was just working off of the work of Vickers and Taylor and all the rest of them so that he didn't look like a fucking idiot when he made that claim. But yeah, like in doing so, he has ousted himself to me as a fucking idiot. I don't know that Shapiro's an idiot. I have not read enough Shapiro, but yeah, Jonathan Bates is a fucking moron, and so is Stanley Wells. They're imbeciles. And couldn't tie their shoes if they had a fucking guidebook. And they wear all Velcro all the time.
So yeah, I'll just read a couple of passages from here because I thought he just kind of does an interesting job, kind of once again talking about this timelessness, and this is just a part of this equation. Is it that the tales are not to say necessarily that Shakespeare's drawing on this archaeoastronomy, but maybe it's just somehow embedded in there anyway. So he says, the figure of Hamlet as a favorable starting point came by chance. Many other avenues offered themselves rich and strange symbols and beckoning with great images, but the choice went to Hamlet because he led the mind on a truly inductive quest through a familiar landscape, and one which has the merit of its literary setting. Here is a character deeply present to our awareness, and whose ambiguities and uncertainties, tormented, self-questioning, and dispassionate insight give a presentiment of the modern mind. His personal drama was that he had to be a hero, but still tried to avoid the role destiny assigned him. His lucid intellect remained above the conflict of motives. In other words, he was and is truly a contemporary consciousness. And yet this character whom the poet made one of us the first unhappy intellectual. There's your transcendental miserablest, right? Concealed a past as a legendary being, his features predetermined, pre-shaped by long-standing myth. There was a numinous aura around him, and many clues led up to him. But it was a surprise to find behind the mask an ancient and all-embracing cosmic power, the original master of the dreamed-of first age of the world. Yet in all his guises, he remained strangely himself. The original Amleth, as his name was in Icelandic legend, shows the same characteristics of melancholy and high intellect. He, too, is a son dedicated to avenge his father, a speaker of cryptic but inescapable truths, an elusive carrier of fate who must yield once his mission is accomplished and sink once more into concealment in the depths of time to which he belongs, Lord of the Golden Age, the once and future king. This, yada, yada, yada. Let me skip one paragraph. Amleth was identified in the crude and vivid imagery of the Norse by the ownership of a fabled mill which, in his own time, ground out peace and plenty. Later, in decaying times, it ground out salt. And now, finally, having landed at the bottom of the sea, it is grinding rock and sand, creating a vast whirlpool, the maelstrom, the grinding stream from the verb mala. Amala is where they think his name possibly derives from, which means to grind, which is supposed to be a way to the land of the dead. This imagery stands, as the evidence develops, for an astronomical process, the secular shifting of the sun through the signs of the zodiac, which determines world ages, each numbering thousands of years. And so yeah, he'll just talk about how this, it's encoding all this other crazy stuff and blah, 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 blah. But let me skip a little further ahead because I'm just trying to read the pertinent parts to the Shakespeare, but without diving too much in his code of claims. But I think he's still kind of hitting on a vein here about, something is still why Hamlet? Why is that one still the most enduring one? Did Shakespeare just really try his hardest on that one? And not saying he did it, because it does seem very much calculated or engineered for longevity in this discussion that we're having today. But but is it also just kind of in the sauce itself, right? Like there's something that you're kind of able to continue upon because of its sort of innate secrets or something like that, right? All right, let me skip a little further ahead here as he kind of goes into all this stuff, because he has an interesting part where he'll kind of, so chapter 1, he'll kind of go into, and he just goes right into, he just copy and paste the entire Saxo Grammaticus story in here, and then he'll do a little reading on it. The proper gate which to enter the realm of pre-Shakespeare and Hamlet is the articles given by Saxo Grammaticus, and the next couple of pages is just literally just the story itself. And then he also was all because some scholars are like, oh, Saxo and these other Icelandic guys, they're just doing the Brutus Tarquin story or whatever, right? And he's gonna kind of argue like maybe if there's some stuff in there, but there's still other older stuff from this Northern European area that doesn't make sense as far as it's all just classics being rehashed. So he'll say, it is a far cry from Saxo's tale in its uncouth setting to the Renaissance refinements of Shakespeare. This is nowhere more obvious than in the scene in the Queen's Hall with its heaped straw on the floor, its simmering cauldrons, its open sewer, and the crude manner of disposing of Polonius, we fed him to the pigs in the original one, all befitting the rude Middle Ages. The whole sad, somber story of the lonely orphan prince is turned by Saxo into Narrenspiel, yet a strong tradition permeates the artless narrative. Hamlet is the avenging power whose superior intellect confounds evildoers, but his intellect also brings light and strength to the helpless and ill-begotten, who are made to recognize their misery. There is nothing pleasant in the revelation brought home to the English king. This is still talking about Saxo's version. Yet he humbles himself through the ruthless insight and adores Hamlet's wisdom as though it were inspired. More clearly than in Shakespeare, Hamlet is the ambivalent power dispensing good and evil. It is clear also that certain episodes, like the exchange of words with Fingo, are crude and pointless devices going counter to the heroic theme. These are said dramatically right only when handled by Shakespeare, but they seem to indicate an original rigid pattern based on the ruse of reason, as Hegel would say. Evil is never attacked frontally, even when convention would require it. It is made to defeat itself. Hamlet must not be conceived as a heroic misfit, but as a distributor of justice. Shakespeare has focused exactly right. He has avoided restoring the brutal, heroic element required by the saga, and made the drama instead wholly one of the mind. In the light of higher clarity, who can escape whipping? It would be pointless to compare all over again the several versions of Hamlet's scheme in the north and the west of Europe and in ancient Rome. That has been done very effectually. Thus, it is only possible to rely on the identity of the shadowy Icelandic Amleth, as it is so-called fairy tale. In a so-called fairy tale, his name is Briam, who is first mentioned in the 10th century and appears anew in Iceland as a Danish reimport in the Amleth saga, written in the 16th or 17th century. Parallels to Amleth's behavior and career have been found in the sagas of Hrolf Kraki and Havlik the Dane, as well as several Celtic myths. In the version reported by Saxo, Hamlet goes on to reign successfully. The sequel of his adventures is taken up in Book 4 of the Chronicle, but this narrative shows a very different hand. It is an inept job made of several commonplaces from the repertory of ruse and fable, badly stitched together. Blah blah blah. Oh, okay. When Hamlet, in addition to the English king's daughter, is made to marry the Queen of Scotland and bring his two wives home to live together in harmony, we can suspect an incompetent attempt to establish a dynastic claim on the House of Denmark to the realm of Britain. Hamlet eventually falls in battle, but there is not so much in the feats of recounted to justify Saxo's dithyrambic conclusion that if he had lived longer, he might have been another Hercules. The true personage has been overlaid beyond recognition, although there still clings to him a numinous aura. Curiously enough, the misconstruing of Hamlet's story in the direction of success continues today. In the recent Russian film version of Shakespeare's play, Hamlet is shown as purposeful, devious, and ruthless character bent only on carrying out a coup d'etat. Yet in Saxo's first part, the tragic meaning is clearly adumbrated when Hamlet's return is timed to coincide with his own obsequies. The logic requires that he perish together with the tyrant. The name Amleth, Amlothi, Middle English Amlaga, and Irish Amladi stands always for simpleton, stupid, or like unto a dumb animal. It also remained in use as an adjective. Gollancz has pointed out that in the Wars of Alexander, an alliterative poem from the north of England largely translated from the History de Prelis, Alexander is twice mentioned contemptuously by his enemies. Thou Alexander, thou ape, thou Amlagi out of Greece. The image of the catafist creature goes insistently with the great certain figures of myth. With the figure of Hamlet, there goes too the dog simile. This is true in Saxo's Amleth, in Embales, and in Hrolf's saga Kraki, where the endangered ones, the two princes Helgi and Hroar, and in Saxo's 7th book Harold and Haldan, are labeled dogs and are called by the dog names Hop and Ho. Then he'll juxtapose, he'll kind of talk about Brutus and the what does Gollancz say? Now comes what looks as at first the first prototype of them all, the famous Roman story of Lucius Junius Brutus, the slayer of King Tarquin, as first told by Titus Livius. The nickname Brutus also connotes the likeness to dumb brutes. Gollancz says of it, quote, "The merest outline of the plot cannot fail to show the striking likeness between the tales of Hamlet and Lucius Junius Brutus. Apart from general resemblance, the usurping uncle, the persecuted nephew, who escapes by feigning madness, the journey, the oracular utterances, the outwitting of the comrades, the well-matured plans for vengeance, there are certain points in the former story which must have been borrowed directly from the latter. This is especially true of Hamlet's device of hiding the gold inside the sticks." That's in the Saxo version. "This cannot be due to mere coincidence, and moreover, the evidence seems to show that Saxo himself borrowed this incident from the account of Brutus and Valerius Maximus. One phrase, at least from the passage in Memorabilia, was transferred from Brutus to Hamlet. Saxo says of Hamlet, obtusi cordis es, Valerius obtuse se cordis, es simulavit. Saxo must have also read the Brutus story as told by Livy and by later historians, whose versions were ultimately based on Dionysius of Halicarnassus. And so, yeah, he kind of wonders that. He spits out another bit here. Let me see if there's anything. I don't think there's anything interesting here. But there's like another major departure from some of the differences. And so...
While you're looking, I was just going to mention Shakespeare uses that element in Titus. Aaron hiding the gold, right?
Oh yeah, you're right. Okay, okay.
I've always wondered why the fuck that's in Titus.
Because that's kind of bizarre that it's then why is so the Titus one is borrowing from the Saxo Grammaticus thing then?
Yeah, but Titus Saxo's already borrowing from Tarquin's story, which Titus is. People have pointed out Titus is not a historical play. Like Coriolanus is also set just a little bit after Tarquin, but Coriolanus is actually historically like 600 or 500 BC or whatever, at the very start of Rome. Titus has elements that covers from pre-Republic Rome, back when it's still a monarchy with Tarquin and stuff, all the way to post-fall Rome, with the Goths and stuff. So like Titus is this big grab bag, but like there's for sure stuff in it from the like just what happens to Lavinia, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we know that Shakespeare's doing Rape of Lucrece in '94 as well. Um, so yeah. Shakespeare would be probably like, well, whoever Shakespeare is at that time would probably be full aware of like both those legends or myths, both the Hamlet Saxo and the stuff that Saxo's borrowing from with Brutus and Tarquin. But yeah, my bad.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, weird intersection of all this sort of stuff, huh? All right, I'm gonna read this last two parts and I'll be done with this. But all right, so I think this is actually from. This is gonna be from. Let's see. To juxtapose the twin brothers Hamlet and Brutus, here is the earlier portion of the tale of Brutus as told by Livy. The subsequent events connected with the rape of Lucrece are too well known to be repeating. All right, but he'll. So this is actually from Livy now. So let's just see if anything stands out. While Tarquin was thus employed on certain defensive measures, a dreadful prodigy appeared to him. A snake sliding out of a wooden pillar terrified the beholders and made them fly into the palace, and not only struck the king himself with sudden terror, but filled his breast with anxious apprehensions, so that, whereas in the case of public prodigies the Etrurian soothsayers only were applied to, being thoroughly frightened at this domestic apparition, as it were, he resolved to send to Delphi, the most celebrated oracle in the world. And judging it unsafe to entrust the answers of the oracle to any other person, he sent his two sons into Greece, through lands unknown at the time and seas still more unknown. Titus and Aruns set out, and, as a companion, there was sent with them Junius Brutus, son to Tarquina, the king's sister, a young man of capacity widely different from the assumed appearance he had put on. Having heard that the principal man in the state, and among the rest his brother, had been put to death by his uncle, he resolved that the king should find nothing in his capacity which he would need, or which he would dread, nor in his fortune which he would covet. He determined to find security in contempt, since in justice there was no protection. He took care, therefore, to fashion his behavior to the resemblance of foolishness, and submitted himself in his portion to the king's rapacity. Nor did he show any dislike of the surname Brutus, content that, under the cover of that appellation, the genius which was to be the deliverer of the Roman people should lie concealed, and wait the proper season for exertion. He was, at this time, carried to Delphi by Tarquina, rather as a subject of sport than as a companion, and is said to have brought, as an offering to Apollo, a gold wand enclosed in a staff of cornel wood, hollowed for that purpose, an emblematic figurative of the state of his own capacity. When they were there, he had executed his father's commission. The young men felt a wish to inquire to which of them the king of Rome was to come, and we are told that these words were uttered from the bottom of the cave. Young men, whichever of you shall first kiss your mother, he shall possess the sovereign power at Rome. Brutus judged that the expression of Apollo had another meaning, and as if he had accidentally stumbled and fallen, he touched the earth with his lips, considering that she was the common mother of all mankind. And then, here's back to the regular text. For the most conventional-minded philologists, Brutus was the answer to a prayer, even to the gold enclosed in a stick. They had the sound classical source from which it is reassuring to derive developments in the outlying provinces. They felt their task to be at an end. With a few trimmings of seasonal cults and fertility rites, the whole Amlethus package was wrapped, sealed, and delivered to join the growing pile of settled issues. Yet even the Roman version was not without its disturbing peculiarities. Livy reports only the answer to the private question of the two princes, but if Tarquin had sent them to Delphi, it was to get an answer to his own fears, and the answer is to be found in Xenonus' compendium of the earlier section of Dio Cassius' Lost Roman History. Delphic Apollo said the king would lose his reign, quote, when a dog would speak with a human voice. There is no evidence that Saxo read Xenonus. There is also a strange variant to Tarquin's prophetic nightmare reported by Livy. It is not like authority, for it is mentioned in Cicero's De Divinatio, and taken from a lost tragedy on Brutus by Axius, an earlier Roman poet. It talks about some rams and other stuff. And there's just another interesting variant of the dream in Amleth's saga, but he says it can't hardly come from Cicero. I don't know why. Blah, 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 blah. Let me, there's the part I want to get to. From the Nurenspiel, the account of Hamlet's ride, or Amleth, along the shore is worth a second look. He notices an old steering oar left over from a shipwreck, and he asks what it might be. Why, they say, it is a big knife. Then he remarks, this is the right way to carve such a huge ham, by which he really means the sea. Then Saxo goes on, quote, as they passed the sand hills and made him bade look at the meal, meaning the sand, he replied that it had been ground small by the hoary tempests of the ocean. His companions, praising his answers, said he had spoken wittingly. It is clear at this point Saxo does not know what to do with these remarks, for he had always pointed out that Amleth's answers were meaningful. Quote, for he was loth to be thought prone to lying about any manner, and wished to be held a stranger to falsehood, although he would never betray how far his keenness went. This being the systematic theme of Hamlet's adventure, a theme worked out and contrived to show him as a Sherlock Holmes in disguise, the two remarks quoted are the only ones left to be pointlessly silly. They do not fit. In fact, they come from a vastly different story. Snorri Sturluson, the learned poet of Iceland, in his Skaldskaparmál, explains many kenningar of famous bards of the past. He quotes a verse from Snærbjörn, an Icelandic skald who lived long before. This kenning had been the despair of translators, as is the case in any very ancient, partly lost poetic language. There are no less than 3 terms in the 9 lines that can be considered hapax legomena, terms that only occur once. The most authoritative translation goes, "'Tis said, saying Snærbjörn, that far out off yonderness the 9 maids of the island mills still remain the host cruel Skerjern, they who in ages past ground Amleth's meal. The good chieftain furrows the whole's lair with the ship's beaked prow. Here the sea is called Amlothi's mill." And so, it's just saying that's going to be a clue for some of these these other parts. But it was an interesting kind of connecting some of the Roman aspects, and yeah, there's still definitely a through line for this tradition here that's related to it. But yeah, just still talking about the basic structure of the story just kind of goes obviously into this Roman the Tarquin and Brutus thing or whatever, right? And you were just talking about Titus Andronicus right before that too, so that was interesting how that segued into it anyway.
Yeah, no kidding. While you were reading, I started thinking that another way to frame this old versus new conversation that Hamlet's sort of struggling with is, or that, we can see Shakespeare developing towards, or just historically it's developing towards that, whether Shakespeare does it or not, is like the relationship of the trickster figure to the hero figure becomes a wider and wider and wider gap. You read any of like really old stuff, chock full of trickster figures, and like that's something that our modern, the more modern we get, the less capable we are of dealing with trickster figures. That trickster figures kind of piss us off as modern readers. It's like, oh well, okay, so you're not a totally cool guy, you're a bad guy. And like I don't know, for us, like we're so Christian or post-Christian that like any sort of sinful act, regardless of what else is done, like it undercuts the hero. And I would say that one such
thing would be to act stupid and do bad things to other people. Um, and so like it seems to me that that is something that Shakespeare is still playing with. That Shakespeare's like, I don't want to totally divorce the trickster figure from the hero figure. But it's a way of like trying to get away with it without fully just like, okay, I can't just fully put them all together again, right? Because like, yeah, if we had that, like, it'd be great. I'd probably love the play. It'd probably read much closer to something like Musidorus, where the prince comes in disguise and everybody's treating him bad and bad things are happening to him, but like he keeps kind of dealing with it, and then eventually, like, yeah, he beats up bears and homeless dudes, and he wins the girl, and like that's it. And like that seems to me much closer to that old school portrayal, right? Um, but Musidorus, that we don't have a printing of that. But if it's anywhere around when Lohengrin's written, then it's written 95 or before. Um, and like Cordo 1 even reads a little closer to that than Cordo 2. But Cordo 2 is like, yeah, we're at this full on thing where we can't just have Hamlet allowed to be the trickster figure and just get the W. Like he can't just come in here and be like Steve McQueen or something. And like, yeah, that what is that hang up about? Why not just give Hamlet the win? Like why not just to hell with Claudius and Hamlet comes out ahead because like that's the story, that is the source, right? But like as you've shown, like, well, no, Belleforest kind of already is muddling that. Belleforest is already, and like I think, yeah, part of it's this Christian moralizing tendency that makes it to where we can't, because like he was saying that that Russian movie version has Hamlet as this like super duper duper calculating, um, and that that's not the correct reading for this author. Um, but it's interesting because that's totally the portrayal in Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. Like it's comically so, to the point where,
Hmm.
yeah, we can definitely suggest that Stoppard's like undercutting it. But it's one of the aspects about that movie slash play that I absolutely love is that you're just with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. They have no fucking clue what's going on. They barely even know their own names. They literally they can like mix up each other's names with each other, and they don't know why they're getting hailed to Hamlet. They haven't seen Hamlet in forever. They don't know what any of this is about, but they understand like it's heavy, serious stuff. And like that's a wonderful meta commentary on just the novice reader in relation to Hamlet as a text, right? Like it's so important, it's so heavy, but fuck if I know what it's about. But like anytime they're actually in a scene with Hamlet, Stoppard will have it actually be a scene from Hamlet, and it's almost like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are either like eavesdropping in on a scene that they're not actually in Shakespeare, or else it's a scene that they are in Shakespeare. And like every other character that's actually part of the Hamlet play, when they're doing a Hamlet scene, it's so quick, it's so fast. It's like the play does not care if we get what's going on or not. It doesn't care if Rosencrantz and Guildenstern get it. Doesn't care if we get it. And it's also driven by Hamlet not caring if anybody gets what he's doing or not. He's clearly got some wacky plan. Um, and so like um, it's tough to like really pin down just like how much of an Iron is he being, to what degree of an Iron is he being, because there's modern portrayals right now with like the one from like 2015 with Andrew Scott where they like totally modernize it, and people our age that are into theater, they love that one. They just love it. I think it's one of the worst things I've ever seen. But Andrew Scott's Hamlet is like almost 100% like on the spectrum autistic. And so it's like clearly none of that calculations there. It's all like in the moment, like struggling to deal with his own emotions and communication of those emotions and being totally in his head to where it's like, yeah, this isn't about Iron at all. This is just about, like, a different character type from the norm. And like, I guess technically that's allowable within the text, and we can get into a whole like, did they Nolan Odyssey that shit or not? But um, at some point, like, it's our inability to understand what the Iron is, and it's our inability to really bridge the gap from something like an Amleth or a Musidorus to Shakespeare's Hamlet as we know it. Like, what can bridge that gap? Because yeah, like we can say, oh, there's a several hundred years between Saxo and Hamlet, and it's like, yeah, sure, but there's only like a few years between Musidorus and Hamlet, and it's theoretically possible Musidorus was written after Hamlet if enough of the Shakespeare Hamlet's available in the '89 Hamlet. And so, like, just, yeah, what about him is so bloody fucking different, and what would make the Shakespeare writer or writers want to tell this old versus new thing? Because I think that's the only way to really unlock why Hamlet is Hamlet, is to really put this comparative old Hamlet versus new Hamlet, or old religion versus new religion. If we don't do that, we just read it as this universal dehistoricized thing, then we get fucking retard Andrew Scott, or sorry, R-tard Andrew Scott, doing, and I don't know if they actually, equate to, autism with mental.
Spectrum.
Yeah. But you watch enough Andrew Scott, that word is it's up for grabs. Andrew Scott's the dude that played Moriarty in like the BBC Sherlock.
Okay.
Yeah. He also he does a lot of Shakespeare. I thought he was decent as Edgar in the BBC Lear. It worked when he was poor Tom better than when he was Edgar, but whatever. He's just famous for being Andy.
Well, this is one of my last questions in that whole question about, irons and acting too. Acting is kind of part of that persona, right? That you're, you're playing a fool. You're not actually a fool, right? There's and to bring it back to Edgar and that sort of thing too, right? So this is a super interesting article I found in the, what is this? The Review of English Language Studies by L.A. Collinson, and they were, because there's a couple different etymologies for Amleth. For Hamlet, for the source of like what does that name come from or what does it mean. One of them that I liked a lot, of course, was Amma plus Oder, which is like Oder is literally the first part of Odin's name that someone had actually suggested one time, and Odin definitely does also do some ironic things too, in that he pretends to kind of like be a person, an old beggar person, because he's also exactly the same way that he was kind of describing in the Hamlet's Mill book, is that it's like a dispenser of justice sometimes too, right? And that you don't know, the king should be on his best behavior because he doesn't know if he's sort of ticking off a god maybe in some cases too, right? And so this article,
undercover boss.
yeah, right, yeah. And so in this one, this lady, she found that so there's like this 8th, maybe it's like written down in the 10th century, but drawing from sources from the 8th or 9th, from this Irish tale called the Togail Brudna. Oh god, I didn't think about that. Brudne de Durga. And she's trying to figure out what's the name Amleth mean, and she's like, yo, there's this exact same sort of cognate basically, and just like in Hamlet's Mill, where he was kind of going to, one of them is like this idea of it means to like churn something, which is what I kind of showed you, and I'd kind of maybe it also showed I showed the Gods of the Morning Wood guys the scene in the Northman when Amleth is rolling out after his father's been dead, and he's like, I'll kill you if you're on there, I'll rescue your mother. But the scene is framed where it's like two rocks, and it's like a rocky beach, and the waves are just constantly churning the rocks there, and that's exactly that sort of the meaning of one of the attestations for the meaning of the name, right? And that's why the Hamlet Mills guy is like, yes, it's about the constantly churning, the axis of the wheel, the processions, and blah 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 blah, right? But she found this like interesting Irish cognate that maybe reinforces that reading. And let me just skip down here to the page 13 here, because this will bring us back to Shakespeare's Hamlet, and that's why I thought this was like really freaking crazy, actually. So I wish to propose that a further possible Irish Hamlet name appears in the pseudo-history Togal Brudne de Durga, which is thought to have been compiled in the 11th century based on 8th or 9th century materials. It's going to be abbreviated to DBDD. TBDD. An unjust king is killed in a strange hall filled with uncanny figures. Amongst these are 3 players, who are first described, then identified by 2 of the men who eventually carry out the killing. These players appear solely in this passage. Here it is. I saw 3 ridiculous men there by the end of the fire, 3 dun cloaks around them. If the men of Ireland were in one place, even though the corpse of his mother or his father were in each of them, not one of them could refrain from laughing at them. And whatsoever place the 30 military force of a district were in the house, none of them would succeed in sitting or lying on account of the 3. Every time the king's eyes alights on them, he smiles at every glance. Identify, etc. Not difficult, etc. Melithi and Male and Admelithi. These are the 3 players of the King of Ireland. A man will die because of each of them, and they will share man victory among them. The player names Melithi and Adamlithi are hapax terms, which to my knowledge occur only in the TBDD. Although the related form Melith is found in other sources. Each derives from Old Irish verb melid, grinds. The most grammatically simple interpretation of Melithi is that it represents a so-called verbal of necessity, an uninflective verbal form roughly equivalent to a Latin gerundive. Understood this way, Melithi means due to be ground. Melithi could also be construed as a passive participle in the nominative case, which would then have to be read as plural ground. Alternatively, Melithi could be viewed as the nominative plural of the feminine verbal noun melith, the action of grinding, crushing, destroying. Melith would be grindings, and Adamlithi, this cognate potentially for Amleth, is an intensified version of the same name, due to be greatly ground, or great grindings. The combination of the ad prefix plus myth appears to be an entirely unattested elsewhere. So the names of the 3 players that act fools and result in the death of this unjust king, essentially, is got to do maybe has a name for the Hamlet or Amleth character, right? And of course, there are already players and plays within plays in our Shakespeare version, right, which are definitely not in this Belleforest and Saxo versions, right? There's definitely not like, oh, I'm gonna go put on a play and catch my uncle and see how he behaves, right? I got when you're playing the fool, it's like you are grinding the target down psychologically, right? Like you're playing stupid and you're kind of making them go crazy, trying to, deal with the antics and all that sort of stuff too, right? And so such names seem appropriate for these player characters. Old Irish meal could mean fool, but also the act of grinding, or even hand mill, kieran. On the other hand, grindings and great grindings suggest threat, sexual activity, or insultingly engagement in the feminine task of flour grinding with a quern. On the other hand, grounds and great ground, or to be ground and to be greatly ground, could reflect the fact that these players are themselves threatened. Also, while the major forms of these grinding and great grinding names need not necessarily imply meal production, it is interesting that one of the TBDD manuscripts give Melithi, apparently miscopied Min Melithi, small fine groundings, or even flour powder grindings in place of Adamlithi. As far as the pronunciation of the name goes, Adamlithi is concerned, it is worth noting at this point that by at least the Middle Irish period, the first consonant cluster would have been pronounced roughly as I don't care about this part. Let me just get to the there's just one part where she's like testing that it could have been that they might Amlathi or Amlithi, the Hamlet name, might be a common appellative for a player's name, basically. Yeah, it's a broad name. Tick to blah 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 blah. Where is she just gonna have it? I forget exactly what page it's on. Yeah. So, but if it is in this old Irish one, like, and like I just mentioned, it's not in the Saxo one. It's definitely not going to be in this Belleforest one, I'm pretty sure. Then does that mean Hamlet, or I'm sorry, our Shakespeare, did he get this idea of having players? Because there are actual actors and players in his Hamlet. Is he somehow reading this TBD thing essentially, right? Like, is he getting this idea? Yeah, I don't really know. And of course, only maybe one, maybe not only one. I shouldn't say of course, but we definitely know at least of one, or one of our favorite Shakespeare candidates who definitely has a little bit of Irish associations and definitely makes references to it, and definitely has a family member stationed over there for a minute too. So Philip Sidney, of course.
And do we have a date on that text?
The TBDD one.
Mm-hmm.
She says it was compiled in the 10th or 11th centuries, but probably drawing on from the 8th or 9th centuries.
Okay, thank you.
Man, I just wish she kind of just summed it up.
Okay.
Like that. I can't find it though.
Just a quick Wikipedia thing, but it has been argued that Chaucer's The House of Fame borrows features from Togail Brudna de Durga. And yeah, we do know Chaucer reigns heavy with Shakespeare.
Oh, here it is. Knowledge of Amleth as a player name. Amleth or similar need not to have only been known as a skaldic term in medieval Scandinavia, which I guess maybe it got over there somehow too. It is possible that it was transmitted as a prose player name, perhaps within a work akin to the TBDD. What suggests this above all is the name Klefson, which is used of an old Irish fool, described in the Norwegian text Konungs Skogsga, known as the Speculum Regale. Blah, 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 blah. And there is yet one thing which remains to be told, if desired, for the sake of entertainment and diversion. An entertaining man lived in this land long ago. He was a Christian, and his name was Clefson. It was said of that man there could be no man whom he could not cause to laugh with his entertaining yet mendacious words. And even if a man were sorrowful, it is said that he could not prevent his laughter if they heard the speech of this man. But he took ill and died, and was then buried in the church like other men. He lay long in the earth until the flesh had all rotted from his bones, and many of his bones were rotten also. Okay. Then it so happened that the men were carrying corpses in the same churchyard, and they dug so near the place in which Clefson was buried that they dug up his whole skull. Oh, are you freaking kidding me? And set it up on a high stone in the churchyard. And there it has remained ever since. And any man who goes there and looks at that skull and sees it into the place where his mouth and tongue were, laughs at once, even if he had been sorrowful before he saw that head. And his deadly bones hardly make fewer people laugh now than when he was alive. Dude. That's crazy. Yeah, that's exactly...
What the heck?
That's exactly
That's
this
Yorick.
thing, right? Yeah, Yorick the Jester, the guy who makes you laugh. And yeah, they literally digging it out of the ground in the Hamlet scene. Yo, that's crazy. Is there anything other part that I can't remember from reading this earlier? Yeah, just making people laugh, blah, 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 blah. There's probably a lot more in here, but yeah, that was some of the main points of this that I was like, yo, that's crazy. Did Saxo know what Amleth this meant? I don't remember reading this at all, so I don't know if I should talk about this yet. We're already approaching the 2-hour mark, so I might wrap it up here anyway and come back to this another day. Because the whole point of reading this is I just wanted to show another one of these potential sources for our Shakespeare's Hamlet, because, yeah, we gotta, there's just, crazier Irish, draws potentially from this sort of stuff, and so pretty wild to see this stuff kind of get around if that's what's actually happening here. And just, once again, I'd kind of said it or alluded to earlier, like, why is Hamlet so endearing? Is it because it's like engineered, or is it just got layer upon layer upon layer of all this sort of different stuff? Not just your obviously classic Roman stuff, and not just your nearby backyard of Saxo and Scandinavian stuff, but this Irish stuff too is also pretty interesting as well. And that it's just layer upon layer upon layer, and that's why it resonates with so many people, because it has all this other DNA in it essentially,
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
What's up, Howard? Good to see
What the
you.
heck?
Marty says, Jack Point
What
is
the
an
heck?
unemployed jester who sings, Winnow all my folly, 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 and you'll find a grain or two of truth among the chaff. He gets caught up in a marriage arrangement and W.S. Gilbert's Yeoman of the Guard.
Hmm. Yeah, the jester is literally grinding the material till, yeah,
Yeah,
good find.
yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because yeah, one of the other famous old Germanic Viking texts is Beowulf, and yeah, the word grindle is supposed to be from the word grind.
Hmm.
So just totally different outlook on on the grind thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, the people think it mean yeah. Nevertheless, how exactly Saxo might have viewed any perceived relationship between Amlothi and the Sea Grinder, Amlethi the player, the Havlik maritime juggler is impossible for now to imagine. Yeah, she mentioned yeah we should tread carefully. Even Yorick seems uncannily like a later version of the dead player Clefsin, who had been imported from the TBD into Kyong Skugsia centuries before. What makes all this stranger is the fact that there are no equivalents to these players in the linked text, Gested in Aurum, or its earlier translations. There, the sole player is Amlethus himself, who entertains guests by acting as a cupbearer at the feast, during which he will later kill his uncle. Okay.
Hmm.
And yeah, there's a lot of association with whirlpool and grinding. I want to pull up that scene now, just because I like looking at that scene too. But yeah, pretty wild. And so yeah, just my pitch about why is Amleth, the story of Amleth or Hamlet, going to continue to be endearing or resonate? Is because is it something to do with all these layered sources in it, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Here we go. Let's see if it'll actually blowing up my audience's ears with my stuff. Let me blow this up. I'll show you a chance. So yeah, just like I said, the grinding of the sea bit in this particular scene, you know. See, and it talks about the churning of the rocky bits and the waves continuously hitting upon this area right here too, right? And that was my wondering of like, yo, dude, yeah, Roger Eggers really knows how to do his layered imagery with the possible sourcing and meaning of all this stuff too, right? Because it's exactly
for sure.
what it means, you know, and it's exactly what Amleth says in the Saxo version, right? Like, oh, those big rocks are turned into little rocks constantly from the grinding of the millstone, and is that what his name even means too? Oh my God.
Interesting. Yeah, because I'm wondering if that's related to the word lathe. One of those like tools that spins with blades, and you put like a thing up that's how you like make a baseball bat or something. But while I was looking that up, apparently the word lathe used to have another definition that's obsolete, and it used to mean a granary or a barn. And they say it's related to the word pile from Old Norse hlath. But yeah, I would assume that hlath is a pile because it has been ground. And they don't trace the etymology farther than the Old Norse on this Wiktionary page. So yeah, sorry.
Yeah, good stuff. So yeah, I guess this is not even the end of our Hamlet discussion. This was just kind of talking about the sources and some of the interesting bits. But yeah, we haven't even done like a line by line reading or particular breaking apart of the text. We kind of alluded to some of the bits, but yeah, I've got more videos, ideas, and more streams coming up in the next couple of weeks as we continue to grind down Hamlet, or something.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, excellent discussion. This is always fun tying it to the historical sources, and yeah, I enjoy getting to hear expertise, and you get your deep cut books, and yeah, I don't know. It's cool stuff, man. Really cool stuff.
Well, yeah, I guess we'll be ending it here tonight for the folks. If you've got anything left, Marty, thanks for hanging out with us tonight. He says you can listen to that song under the title he mentioned earlier, I've Jest and Joke. He says a very fine composition.
Okay. Okay. Shut up. Thanks, Marty. Thanks for tuning in as always. Also, you're the man.
And so,
Um,
yeah, if anyone's got any Hamlet productions, because maybe I also want to. I haven't actually watched a Hamlet production before, So other than this, I was also initiated into the Kenneth Braggart. What is his goddamn name?
Brannig,
Brannig. I was in.
Gilderoy Lockhart. Yeah.
Yeah, I know who he is. I just can't never forget his last name. But I was initiated into watching that in high school as well. I definitely remember watching it and being hella bored watching it too. Being very,
It's
very
awful.
bored.
I hate Brannig's Hamlet. I hate him setting it in the Edwardian period. I hate his portrayal of Hamlet, um, like just as a character. I just have a general rule with Brannig. Like, I don't trust him to both act and direct. I'll let him do one or the other. I won't let him do both. That just it seems like he took all the wrong lessons from his first venture with Henry V and just got worse and worse and worse as he went with his decisions. I think he's wonderful as Iago and Othello, but he does not direct that movie. And he's still the best Iago I've seen. But yeah, he's god can awful. He's all right as Benedict. It works, but it's a little Gilderoy Lockharty. But yeah, he's something fierce as Hamlet. It just don't work. But like, I don't know. I don't know that I've seen a version of Hamlet that I'm like, yeah, that was actually pretty good. Like every Hamlet I've watched, I'm like, not trash, throw it away. Um, the one they did with Shakespeare in the Park like 2 or 3 years ago, they made it like modern hip hop Hamlet, and it was probably the best one I've seen. Like it's better than the Andrew Scott one. Um, it's probably like as good or better than the Mel Gibson Hamlet. Like, to be fair, I have not watched any of the classic like Gail Good or Olivier ones, so um, probably not being too fair a judge. But yeah, like it's not like Macbeth. Like yeah, like Denzel fucked up Macbeth royally, but like I feel like anybody else, you can kind of make Macbeth work. Like I feel like Fassbender made it work pretty well, and they even had this really low budget Hamlet somewhat recently, starring one of the co-stars of Last Kingdom. It's not the main guy, but it's like the guy that plays his buddy. They had him playing Macbeth, and that one's really cheap and bad, but like he still works as Macbeth. Um, but like yeah, I've not seen like one version of Hamlet where I'm like, yeah, that actor totally gets it. Like there's parts where Mel works, but Mel's too like off the hook. Like Mel is too fucking crazy, and it turns way too much into crazy tormented Hamlet that can't control himself, and it gets a little too far from the Iron thing. And um yeah, I'm cool with Hamlet being tormented, but all that torment is inside here. I don't think we ever actually see it for real. I think what we see is all his posturing to see it as exactly how we want it, but the actual real torment, it's all in here, and he doesn't let it out for anyone but the audience to see.
Yeah. Yeah. Man. Yeah.
But yeah, discussion for another. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because even before we read it for book club, because I hadn't read it in a minute, probably since high school. So I was like, I was afraid of it being a letdown, but no, it's like from the get go, it's just like, oh no, like I'm having a great time, and yeah, I just every bit of that play, like every line was just really fun to eat up.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And that plays way funnier than anybody portrays it. Also,
Right.
I don't know. That's just a general problem with Shakespeare in general. People are totally cool with funning up the comedies, and even a few tragedies. They'll fun it up. Like people fun up Romeo and Juliet big time. They'll make a lot of fun out of, like, yeah, literally the one that was in Shakespeare in the Park this summer. They just turned it into a happy ending comedy.
Hmm.
So like, yeah, funded up 110%, but like, they'll fun up Titus as well,
I can see that.
um, but like, yeah, for the most part, like, I do feel like especially Hamlet, Macbeth, and Caesar, those are the ones where the comedy gets drained by any direction, any production. It just inevitably gets drained. And like, what was so damning was that even the Coen brothers could not find humor, or Joel Coen could not
Yeah.
find humor. So, dude, everything you do is funny. Like, what? Why the fuck isn't your Macbeth?
Yep.
Like, what a slog! What a fucking pile of trash. That's why they don't make movies anymore. I don't know. What a shame. What a just terrible end to a career. What a travesty. But I digress. Before yeah, I feel like I could just rant about that movie for 2 hours, and shout out for stream ideas if anybody's interested. But um, yeah, the point being that Hamlet just works on the page, and I don't know if it's ever going to work on the stage. And there's a gradient of that in Shakespeare, where I think there's some that work the opposite, like Pericles or Comedy of Errors. Um,
Yes.
but
Yes.
yeah, Hamlet seems like distinctly to me, especially like if we're talking quarter one Hamlet, I don't know that that's the case. Quarter one Hamlet might actually play pretty well on the stage, and like we won't be like, oh, this is the bad Cordo. But Cordo too, like, good luck trying to put that on.
Yeah.
But like, that's the damnable thing that I said earlier, that the only way that people can gateway into Hamlet is to watch the movie, like I did in high school. But if the portrayal can't be done, then it's just like Hamlet can't be gatewayed in any shape or form except to fully Lion King it, or fully Fat Ham it, or to just absolutely adapt it away from the Shakespeare itself.
Hmm.
And like, at that point, like, are you like are you closer to Shakespeare or Saxo or Belleforest
Right. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
or, or Osiris, or or Orestes, or once we get into that, like, what is the relationship to Shakespeare? And so, like, I don't know, there's something crazy that Hamlet has been this successful, that it is this well lauded, and like, to me, it's impossible. Like, it's impossible for it to be successful, yet it is the most successful play. And I'm not sure what to make of that exactly at the moment. Like, that's a real conundrum for me. Like, what does that mean about history and the way we pass knowledge on? That this thing that nobody gets or understands is still the most important thing. And like, maybe that's why I appreciate Stoppard, is that like, he's sort of bringing that question up, I think. Um, but yeah, like, what the fuck does that mean? uh,
I think it kind of goes back to our ponderings about, the way that we kind of even receive Shakespeare in general, right, is actually going to be in the written form. Like we don't have DVDs of the plays back then. It seems to be, yeah, there's something more powerful about the mind's eye version of this particular play, or maybe some of the other ones too. Like you said, like I just found, yeah, like Comedy of Errors unreadable. Like it was unreadable. Like the gags and the play on the imagery and the names being too similar. Yeah, I was just like, I can't read this. Like, this doesn't make any sense. Where this is one of
yeah.
the few that I've actually watched, and I remember being hilarious. And so yeah, something about Hamlet, which is already a very psychologically um, bound play already, and yeah, oh, look and behold, it actually works really well in a closed reading kind of setting or something like that too. So I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I don't know, in that sense, I wonder, like, yeah, how does Hamlet continue to get adapted, and how does Hamlet continue to change in the sort of portrayals and interpretations and adaptations, where we're hitting this point where, like, yeah, like, you can't even touch the thing until you're fully initiated now. And so it's like,
Right,
you don't get to
right.
have this form
moments for it to inspire you and to build on. Like all those ladies and dudes that wrote them Disney Renaissance movies, they were already initiated on Hamlet by undergrad,
Right.
so that when they got their jobs, that's the shit for them to pull from. But now it's like you know, you got to be like an absolute theater junkie or a grad school level, you know, reader to like have a reason to dig that far into Hamlet to try to understand Hamlet. I think, a lot of us lay readers, attempt it and try it, and we do our best, and probably do just as well as, any of them university folks or whatever. But, yeah, like, I don't know. I wonder if things like Much Ado are going to start taking over. And, like, lo and behold, we're seeing Much Ado get played, like, once a year in big name stages. Like, right now, Much Ado is about to start running on Broadway, and it's starring Tom fucking Hiddleston, like, and Haley Atwell. Like, yeah, they're Marvel stars. And yeah, that it's gonna do gangbusters, and everybody's gonna love it. But like, yeah, and so some 15-year-old kid that's going to see the theater scene, if he saw last year's Othello, that shit ain't doing nothing formative for him. But if he's seeing this year's Much Ado, he's going ape bananas. And like, so yeah, there is this going into your podcast with Chris at Caffeine and Philosophy, like accessibility. Like accessibility is becoming just a huge issue with Shakespeare, and like it's something that I think people like me are only making worse and complicating, because like I'm sitting here trying to tell everybody that university Orthodox scholars don't even can understand Shakespeare. Like what's all this Irish shit about? Um, like top of the morning. Like I had no idea. Like and like for all intents and purposes, I think very few people have thought about that, and very few people have answers that have thought about it. And so it's like, what really? I don't know. I just get so like Pyrrhonianly skeptical when it comes to like Shakespeare and Elizabethan literature, where I'm like, dude, yeah, like there's stuff we like and there's stuff we do get and we hold on to it, but like, quit acting like we have a full grasp of it. Like there is some stuff lost in historical translation here. There's a context we're missing, even if we were around in their time. Is it, not to get too conspiratorial or like, but esoteric knowledge, just inside jokes, things like that. And it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Um, um, but yeah, we can call it here, because I feel like if you let me, I'll tangent you till dawn. So let's wrap it up. But I do think we should come back and talk more Hamlet soon, because yeah, we didn't even get to. I got all this stuff that I want to like bring up Gerard with Hamlet, and which we talked about in book club. Like, I don't know. I think that there's so much of this like mimetic leading, and like the play is playing off of all this mimetic leading to the point where we, the audience, are part of that. And so, like, just a little sneak peek, but like the Hamlet does this amazing thing where if somebody's by themselves, you're skeptical of fully trusting what's being said, because nobody else is there to verify it. No, like, so if Hamlet is just there with the ghost, did that really happen or not, or is that Hamlet's psychosis, right? So when we have a lack of people, it undercuts the proof of the situation. It gets solipsistic. And so it's like, okay, we need people in the scene. But as soon as we have people in the scene, guess what happens? We undercut it, because we say, oh, whoever is saying this is not making a good faith speech communication act. They're putting on a front. They're posturing. They're posing. They're dissembling. And so we're all of a sudden like, nope, can't trust that either. And it's like, well, now you officially can't trust anything that happens in this play, because that's all things, either when they're by themselves or when they're not. And so I think the play and the playwrights are just totally having a field day with that effect. And it plays into Vonnegut's whole spiel about Hamlet
I was
that,
gonna bring up Vonnegut.
we can
Yeah.
chart out we can chart out the plot. So, Cinderella starts out bad, gets really good, gets really bad, then unending happiness. Or we can plot out, classic Hollywood film, normal guy right in the middle, has this great thing, but then comes back down to earth, but he's a little better off because of it or something. Or we can go into the Kafka play structure where shit just starts off bad and just gets infinitely worse till we're done reading. Like, but then we get to Hamlet, and it's like, okay, does it start off good or bad? Like, well, he's a prince, so that's good. It's not like Cinderella where she's a broke bitch, but it is like Cinderella where you got a dead parent, so that's bad. Well, I don't know, we'll call it even, But then what happens after that? Like, well, he gets to talk to a ghost. He gets to talk to his dead dad. You watch The Lion King, that was a fucking good thing. But in this play, it's not clear that it's a good thing, right? Like, or Harry Potter even, it's not like Harry Potter or The Lion King. It's like it's possibly like communing with hell for a second. Like it could be really bad.
Yeah.
And so that lack of context throughout the whole play constantly it leaves you disoriented to where you can't make these value judgments super easily or at all. And it just makes the play have this weird straight line where it's like, I don't know if that's good or bad, just put it in the middle. I don't know if that's good or bad, just put it in the middle. I don't know if that's good or bad. And, Vonnegut's whole spiel about having arcs to your story is that's what makes them good. That's why it's not like, 4,000-year-old texts, which are just like totally descriptive texts that say this thing happened, then this thing happened, then this thing happened, then this thing happened, and there's no real arc or intrigue to it. It's just a straight line of this happened, this happened, this happened. And that's the worst literature on the planet. But then somehow Shakespeare does that same exact format, and we're calling it the best literature on the planet ever. And so, what is that? And at some point, that's Vonnegut's way of saying, yeah, Shakespeare's the first postmodern. This is a postmodern text. It's cubism, right? Like, what Picasso and all those cubists are doing is they're giving you just the straight line, and depending on how you want to interpret it, it will change the topography of it. Yeah, but it's even more so than cubism, because cubism, you still have to like kind of imagine it or blur your vision or just kind of ponder on it. It's like, I don't know, Shakespeare, it's like real time happening. Something can be good, then something can be bad, and then on recollection, it's flipped. And so yeah. I officially digress. Officially shutting up now.
All right, y'all. Make sure you drop your likes and comments down below in the video. Make sure you pitch any other ideas for streams that you want to hear about, because I plan on just doing Hamlet for maybe the next couple of weeks, the same time for the next couple of Thursdays. We're gonna batter down the hatches and just keep grinding out, to refer to our motifs tonight. Gonna keep grinding out these Hamlet streams while it's fresh on my mind, because we read it a while ago, and I just keep thinking about it, as one with who's read Hamlet does. So yeah, make sure you drop your love and your likes down below. Go check out the shop down in the link description box, and go pick yourself up an Apocalypsis Historia official logo t-shirt to kind of help out the channel. Come join the Areopagus Book Club, where you can get all these thoughts in real time with us every single week as we meet up and read Shakespeare plays and do the exact same thing we're doing here tonight, but just doing it in a much smaller, more intimate club. So thank you all so much for hanging out with us tonight. Thanks to all the usual supporters, Patreon channel members, Substack subscribers, and Patreon members. I couldn't do this without y'all. We really appreciate it, and we will see you all on the next video. Make sure you go read it for yourself, everyone. Nullius in verba. Adios.